please visit my website, programtokill.net. Go to plans and prices for even more exclusive information. You can also support me now on Patreon. Add me on TikTok. And leave a like and comment.
It has to do with the survivalist movement in California. A gentleman, Leonard Lake, was arrested out here just a month ago, and before the police could ask him any questions about a stolen car, he had a cyanide bullet, and he bit the bullet, literally, and died. And then they went to his property up north in the northern area of California, about 125 miles north of San Francisco, and put together that he and Charles Ng, NG, were part of an operation they call the Survivalists, but it's more than that. Their house has been compared to the Nazi bunkers in Germany. Now, this is the first time I've seen the word Nazi bunkers in the United States. We heard about the bunker of the Move people in Philadelphia, but they referred and have been they've been writing about the death squads, that they brought people, a man and woman and their child, and another woman and her child, and what they've been doing is bringing them to the property up in Northern California and taking pictures of them with sexual fantasies and abuses, and then they release them on the property. There's quite a lot of acreage there, and then shoot them like animals. Now, I said that John Connally, former Secretary of the Navy, former governor of Texas, was named on tapes having to do with the Klan, the Nazis in Texas, and the men that were going to invade Dominica Island, and they were going to import blacks to shoot them and hunt, shooting live people running for their life. Well, these are Americans living in the South Bay, San Jose, San Francisco, put ads in the paper to sell video sets or sell cars, something they have to sell. And these men pick them up and take the whole family. The cars are left. They don't need the cars. Now, these same group, there's a woman involved who wants protection or security from the law, and she'll talk. Her name is Claralyn Balazs, B-A-L-A-Z-S. She was married to Leonard Lake, and she knew and was participating in these things. I hope they don't give her immunity, because there is enough to include her in all these crimes. But they show pictures of Leonard Lake and Claralyn, and they refer to them and Charles Ng as the ninja, the soldiers of fortune. That one of the things they've done is taken large amounts of weapons out of military bases. The ninja is the Japanese group that kill for the fun of it, that go out and kill for no motive, that hunt and get people and practice just the art of killing, like you shoot deer or whatever men go out or women do and go out and shoot. They refer to them as into medieval fantasies, but the ninja advertises that book is In Soldier of Fortune, in Survival, published by Robert Brown, who works with the State Department, works with the military, with John Singlab that I've talked about. This connects to all of these various groups that I've been trying to illustrate. The domestic Central Intelligence Agency, Nazi Defense Department, killing teams who are working in this country. This is just one story that broke, but I'm sure these missing people all over the country and the story of how they disappeared will all connect. Now, pictured on a map in the San Francisco Examiner are various faces that have come out of this geographical area that worked up here, lived up here, got started. One was Reverend Sun Myung Moon with his colonies up in this area. Charles Manson. Remember, I did a story on the shooting of Joe Cooper for the National Examiner on the Manson case and his friends in Northern California. Jim Jones from up there, Kenneth Parnell, who kidnapped a young boy and had him as a homosexual slave for around 12 years. Lewis Johnson, who had a van down outside of South San Francisco with Tara Burke and the sexual abuses that went on with his child and another little boy, the boys in jail. And Rios Montt, who went on to Guatemala to head that country, that dictatorship, all nurtured out of this same milieu. Now, these people are, for all you think they're crazy, but they are part of our establishment, work with the law enforcement, police, and have been protected, and are working their way up to the highest echelons of our government. A very scary story, and it's much too long now to detail a lot of it, but I'll be doing that very shortly with you. The survivalists in California. The Lakes took goats, and a lot of these survivalist magazines advertised getting goats and how to use them for milking. They took 2 goats and made the unicorn that was the star attraction in New York City, the Ringling Brothers, that's traveling around. Mr. Lake was a barker. He met Claralyn at the Renaissance fairs we have here in California, Northern California, and Southern California. During the hippie days, they were recruiting sexual partners and hippies from the Berkeley Barb. They are from the Marines. The 2 guys, Lake and Eng, were in the Marines. When Eng was in a prison, a stockade in Hawaii, he was recruited through the survivalist magazines to connect up with Lake. They use those magazines, and they're mercenaries that can go out and kill. So you get all the connections of the way the Aryan nations, the Aryan Brotherhood, works through the prisons, how they get their weapons, how they're making killing a hobby. And right now, I don't think there's any black people. These are all white middle-class people that they're practicing killing, and then later they'll sharpen their knives and go after the Jews and blacks. Just pass over quickly a few comments about the death of up at Calaveras County in California, the group known as the Survivalists. Leonard Lake, who ate the cyanide pill, died, of course, right on the spot before he was taken to explain 25 or 6 or more murders. The chief person with him, Charles Eng, NG, left the country. He was escorted to the airport by Lake's ex-wife, who was with him up until the moment all of these events were exposed. It's her parents' property where these deaths are taking place or were taking place, and the bunker was located, and her father was providing trucks for Leonard Lake and Charles Eng. Very heavily involved in this, the ex-wife was allowed to leave the country yesterday, according to the newspapers, so she and Charles Eng have left. Now, these American death squad, these survivalists, are linked to our Defense Department, to the CIA, to Nazi connections around the world, and it isn't any coincidence that the 2 major people walked out of this country. Several other people left this country and are involved with the Air Canada, the Indian airline, crash that took place this week. The Soldier of Fortune magazine has an article on Otto Skorzeny this month. They had one last month. Buy it on the stand. It's July 1985. Soldier of Fortune began in 1975, and that was at the time of the death, the same year that Otto Skorzeny died. Soldier of Fortune began, and I believe they continued with the same process of sending mercenaries, this time advertising them in the magazine, and the tradition of Skorzeny fighting these battles overseas and using these death squads. It didn't end when Skorzeny died, but General John Singlaub could set up Soldier of Fortune that same year. Incidentally, the issue of July 85 has a poster that you can order of G. Gordon Liddy holding a gun. Tough man, G. Gordon Liddy from Watergate. He was in our Treasury Department in the FBI. Here he graces the pages of this magazine, as well as a book review of Edward Luttwak's book, Coup d'etat in America. And I think Liddy and E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis and that whole group, James McCord, had a role in the coup d'etat in America. Don't pass up this issue, because there's a lot of material in there, and realize that there are connections between all of these people and the survivalist movement. We can't do them all in 1 hour this evening. Raul Sanchez Zamudio, a 41-year-old counselor at a county-operated home for juvenile delinquents, was arraigned. And again, you get these people in charge of juvenile delinquents. I remember way back, and I want to update it, the Charles Eng, Leonard Lake, Claralyn Balazs case with Calaveras County, with umpteen corpses, body bags taken out, about 36 it seemed, and Leonard Lake bit the cyanide bullet rather than face investigations when he was picked up by the police. And Charles Eng is in Canada fighting extradition. I think he'll be home soon to be charged with 3 or 4 murder cases. But Claralyn Balazs, whose parents owned the property, still own it for all purposes, where a bunker was built for torture, and this was an occult group but they were involved, I believe, in much higher political connections that portend something very dangerous and serious. I mentioned those before. This Paul Seshola, who was sending arms to Iran, who worked with Cyrus Hashemi and Mr. Khashoggi, Adnan Khashoggi, and the usual team of the CIA front-runners for guns, drugs, subterfuge. Mr. Paul Cutter has the same attorney, Mr. Carroll, that Claralyn Balazs has. And there are indications to me, a lot of them, that this is a very, very political case. But Claralyn works for the juvenile delinquents, too. She even took juvenile delinquents to the property up there where they had videotapes and photographed, I don't know, couldn't be tortured because they went back to San Jose, but these young people were taken up there to the bunker for a weekend or weekends, plural, I don't know. So again, Raul Zamudio is a counselor at a county, paid by the county, operated home for juvenile delinquents. And how bad are the county homes or the fundings of federal and state money that the people who are handling these affairs are involved in satanic rituals, in the occult, and so forth? According to the police report released Friday, when they searched Zamudio's Hollister home, they found an altar and items that an expert in the occult said linked to the occult fascination with fertility, sexuality, and virginity, and also, you might say, with murder, right? Okay? Zamudio, since 1984, that goes back 4 years ago, has been working with delinquents, and so much for that. A story in the San Jose Mercury this week, doctors to study Lake's brain for clues about violent behavior. The medical officials are saving the brains of Leonard Lake. There are no disappearances of 25 people linked to him and 9 known deaths, body bags and bones of approximately 25 people. And they're going to take his brains, and Dr. Vernon Mark, the same doctor that worked with the men from UCLA, and Dr. Sweet, the same doctor who did the brain surgery on Leonard Keeley that I talked about, Dr. Vernon Mark, director of neurosurgery at Boston City Hospital, associate professor of the prestigious Harvard Medical School. Mark is the author of Violence and the Brain. We'll look at his brains, and then they go back to something I've warned and talked about for how long? The Charles Whitman, Texas Tower murder. This article refers to where 18 people were killed at the university in Texas, and his brains were studied to see if he had a tumor. And the idea is that you cut open slices of the brain to see what there is about these things that they had in common. Well, what if they had something in common? Do you open the brains of normal people to see if they have the inclination or the brains to kill? This was the beginning of taking brains of blacks after the riots, after Martin Luther King was killed, creating the violence and frustration, then giving the go-ahead by the government, the LEAA, and the federal funding to Dr. Mark and Irvin and Sweet in Boston, the green light to take brains from minorities, whether it's Indians or blacks or Chicanos particularly, and even brilliant scientists such as Leonard Keeley, who invented the Polaroid camera that went then into the hands of Mr. Land and the Defense Department. And Keeley became a vegetable out here in California with still the electrodes in his head. Well, these same people now want to take the slices of Leonard Lake's brains and understand those brains. Now, Ronald Reagan is president. He's no longer governor. Edwin Meese is no longer legal advisor. He's attorney general. And Caspar Weinberger is no longer head of the HEW. He is secretary of defense. And these were the men that were told by the Senate investigation committees, cut out what you're doing at these federal locations and also, I suppose, state. This was federal investigation of mind control. Now, Frank Irvin, who went out to work at UCLA with Dr. Jolly West and Dr. Vernon Mark, his associate, who is going to examine these brains of Leonard Lake, and I know that this has federal implications, military implications, that compound out in Calaveras in California. They wrote a paper on the reasons for studying violence and doing surgery on the brain, and they cited their experimentations with Charles Whitman, how he shot 41 people and killed 17. These people are going to work on the brains of Leonard Lake. There are tremendous political significances here, and also those missing people. How do we know who they were and what their role was? And I'm sure many of them were selected to be killed. Now, the story this morning in last night's news is that Charles Ng, who worked with Leonard Lake, Dr. Mark will work Vernon Mark with his brains, and then he'll get Charles Eng's if he dies. There's a snag in the extradition. He knew to go to Canada with. They know who drove him there. They knew where he stayed there. And by being picked up in Calgary, Canada, or any city there, his attorney already has a clause going back to the 19th century that he doesn't have to be extradited. I'll be very surprised if this trial ever goes on, just as I predicted. The Klaus Barbie trial couldn't start until Mengele was dead, and they probably don't believe Mengele's dead. And so in January, it'll be 3 years that Klaus Barbie is sitting in a jail. The trial can't start. Charles Ng could be sent back to Hong Kong, deported to Hong Kong, where he originally came from. He was caught taking weapons in the United States Navy, in the Marines rather, in Hawaii. And another shocking story of his military records came out this week, just showing the implications of the collusion of these people. It is so horrendous. This is the San Francisco Chronicle, Saturday, July the 6th, 1985. Military records, Ng spoke of slaying when in the Marines. Now, this guy was in the stockades because he had taken 2 machine guns, 3 grenade launchers, 4 M16 rifles, 7.45 caliber pistols, and 3 Starlight scopes for night shooting. And he said that the Marines was boring. He wanted to get out because nothing happened and there was no action. So he had a Marine attorney who represented him there, and he got off on that. He escaped from all of this and came to the United States. He said, he told the attorney, I consider myself a good liar. I know how to kill. If you know how to kill, you make friends with somebody because then it's easy. They don't know who you are. And your best friend is your enemy. And then he boasted to this attorney back in July 82, 3 years ago, that he killed a California man, that he set off a bomb in California, that he shot and killed the owner's livestock, that he put potassium cyanide in a salt shaker in the Marine mess hall, that he tried to kill a staff sergeant. The attorney never had anything on the record to look up these things that probably all were proven to be true. And I believe that Charles Ng and Leonard Lake were running the kind of a castle that Franz Stengel trained at in Germany, where they had a location. I'll do more details on that for you later, and taught how to kill and took photographs of people, just as these people had videotapes and detailed photographs of the various people up there. Germany ran these testing places before they ran the mass concentration camps, and they would take pictures such as gassing a person for 3 minutes or 2 minutes and 1 minute and watching their agony, then sending the pictures to Berlin to show the degree of time particular doses do and how they die. And they had schools for murder, and these schools were done. They wanted to train those people to learn to kill their own, like for Austrians to kill Austrians, because it's easy to take hunchbacks and Jews and mentally fit or the aged, but they wanted to get their tolerance for killing their own. And this place in Calaveras is only one across the country. You'll find that there are a lot more. But, of course, California is the nut house. Ronald Reagan here 8 years, and Edwin Meese, and our Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Jensen. And you know how many times I've talked about the California violence. Well, Mr. Ng had no record in the Marines of seeing a military psychiatrist while he was in Hawaii. And again, Hawaii was and is a place for training mind-controlled zombies and various mass murders from California. And Mark David Chapman was sent to Hawaii for his dose of it before he ended up in front of the Dakota Hotel killing John Lennon. No record of this attorney checking out these things. He simply left the Marines. He's the son of a Hong Kong, in quotes, traveling cameraman who managed to have his son going to school in London, and I believe he probably started very young as a candidate for such as the Tavistock school there, run by the late John Rawlings Rees, and went from London to the United States and to the Marines, but kept the Hong Kong passport so he could be sent to Hong Kong and never be tried. Claralyn Balazs, that's B-A-L-A-Z-A, B-A-L-A-Z-S, I'm sorry, is the ex-wife of the late Leonard Lake, although I've mentioned before that she was close to him up to the moment that he was dead and helped Mr. Charles Ng get out of this country. He got out of this country by a lift of somebody he corresponded with in a prison. He was 2 years in Kansas, and this is very important, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, because from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, comes the new director of the Texas prisons. The head of it, Raymond Percunier, has just left there, I guess to get a high appointment in this administration. They've had enough murders and squabbles there, and I'm not going to detail Percunier's record. In California now, I've done a long ago, many hours on Raymond Percunier. But the new director of the Texas Department of Corrections comes from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I'm sure that he and his gang knew Charles Ng there. Another story about Leonard Lake's wife, always the ex, like ex-Nazi. This is out of the San Francisco Chronicle, July the 2nd. San Francisco Examiner. It is Examiner Chronicle, but they have two different editions during the weekdays. Lake's ex-wife suspected of recruiting models. Now, where do you think she worked? She worked at the juvenile hall in San Mateo County, and the probation authorities are investigating her work because in charge of juvenile probation, she had taken 21 young women who happened to have their snapshots on the wall of Lake's bunker up there. It's in Calaveras County, Wilseyville, California. Wilseyville. Now, this is exactly like Jim Jones or the school at UCLA. Give us your poor, give us your ones on probation. We'll mind test them, we'll drug test them, we'll electrode them, we can kill them. Human beings are part of a meat and sausage factory. Anybody who's done a minute's research would back up the stories I've been telling you for a long, long time. Now, the story of Charles Ng and the Wilseyville bodies, also in Calaveras County, those two difficult names to remember. The common denominator between the mass murders of Charles Ng and Leonard Lake with their Nazi bunkers, these killers, is a woman, Claralyn Balazs, Claraln Balazs, who was married to the late Leonard Lake, who bit the cyanide bullet when he was arrested, and Charles Ng is protected in Canada. Now, the common denominator between them, the law office of Chris Carroll and Stan Rosansky, is representing Claralyn Balazs. That is their attorney, and her family owns the property where they experiment, cut people up, and did these murders. And the attorney for the case of Paul Seshola with the highest echelon of military is also the office of Chris Carroll and Stan Rosansky. They have more in common than just attorneys. They're big cases that involve mass murder, experimentations, work with Nazis, work with death squads in South America, and also a possible common denominator is an article I read in the San Francisco Examiner just last month. Police are looking for a San Diego drug dealer with links to Wilseyville bodies. And I'll detail that for you because I still am questioning the John DeLorean narcotics, the possible links to the Nazis, and also the drug dealers in San Diego and the missing gold of Mr. Dominelli. From Brazil, the scandals that go down from San Diego to Brazil, and the lawyers in common, and the way the Charles Ng case has been hushed up in Canada, where he went for protection. Now, that is a big ball of wax. I'm just saying that through the globe, I've taken certain stories and just copied from my atlas the places on the globe and marked arrows where these particular people meet and what they have in common. So when you come across articles on the Iranian weapons, the sale of Iranian weapons, a trial where they'll all obviously plead something guilty, like Mr. Walker, so there won't be a public trial. There are more things in common between these two huge stories than meets the mind, and I'll do more about them later. In the meanwhile, we'll take a 1-minute break and go on to some other individual and mass murders and just summarize what in the heck has been going on in this country, around the world. It is very serious, and I don't think anybody, or hardly anybody, with the exception of a handful of people, such as David Emery and Nip Tuck and Charles Spears in Texas, have that full awareness of how this thing is going and where it's going and how it came to be.